I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Monday edition of Conversations with Al McFarlane. For the next several Mondays and for the past several, we've been focusing on political leadership in our community, beginning to look early on at the upcoming elections in November, focusing primarily on city council elections. But we're not limited to that. We want to talk about the entire political spectrum, and we've invited candidates and electeds who are not running right now to show up and talk about their priorities, their issues, how and ways they want to serve you in community, and how you ensure that your voice is heard in determining what our community, what our ward, what our district will be, and how we'll benefit, grow, become more sustainable, more livable. And so we continue with that today. And I'm pleased to always thank Diana Hawkins and my colleagues, partners at Hawthorne Neighborhood Council for co-hosting this series. We call it the Monday Leadership Series. Our idea was to engage on a regular basis the executive directors of many of the center city neighborhood revitalization project organizations, organizations undergoing considerable change right now because their funding streams for the future are uncertain. So we'll talk about that as we go on. But today I'm pleased to have on the program Representative Phu Lee. He represents District 59A in North Minneapolis. Also joining us today, Crystal Porter, a candidate for Ward 5 City Council. Elijah Norris, a candidate for Ward 5 City Council. Today we have Robin Wansley Warloba. Robin Wansley Warloba, a candidate for Ward 2 in Minneapolis. Hopefully returning Stephen J. Frisch, a candidate for Ward 10. Returning Tekin Zaya Aida, Ward 7 candidate for City Council, and joining us today for the first time, Al Flowers Jr., candidate for Ward 9 in the city of Minneapolis. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to those of you who are listening on here on YouTube or on Facebook. We want you to engage. We're monitoring the feed on both YouTube and on Facebook. Get a question or a comment, put it in the conversation. We'll try to share it and bring it to our candidates. So let me start with Representative Phu Lee. Phu Lee, are you there?
I'm on here, yes.
Good to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Al. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the other folks here, too.
Well, first of all, in the age of COVID, how are you and your family doing? You guys holding up, and what's going on with you personally in terms of your well-being and family well-being?
Family is doing well. I'm doing well personally. I'm really excited to be on here to share some news that we have about being over at the Capitol. And you may have seen out the financial forecast of the state. It's looking better than it is before. And so I'm really hopeful that we could get some work done this year.
Great. Well, let's jump right into it. And our objective, and you've nailed it on the head already, Representative, is to give the people an idea of what's happening in terms of priorities and successes over at the state capitol. So take it away and sort of give an update, a report. And if I have questions or others, we can bring those to you in the course of the conversation. And again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your service to our community and our state.
Yeah, so I have the opportunity this year to chair the Minnesota House Capital Investment Committee, and we saw that with the forecast on Friday that we are actually looking at a budget surplus of 1.6, understanding that most of the financial well-being of the state will be a result of what they are doing over at Congress with their the House, the U.S. House passing the $1.9 trillion dollar bill to help support, states like Minnesota, our local municipalities like Minneapolis, and some of our local areas. And so knowing that we have that capacity to really invest in the state, I'm pushing through my committee to really look at what can we do around public infrastructure throughout the state. And right now we have seen that updated DAP capacity report that right now the state of Minnesota, if willing, we have the capacity to bond and borrow about $3.3 billion worth of public infrastructure. And this means that, we are really investing in the communities that needs the jobs the most. And so going forward, I know that this is something that we should be taking advantage of because of our AAA rating and low interest rates right now in the state of Minnesota. And so that's what I'm really pushing for through my committee with the capital investment.
So what does it mean for small businesses, for example, on Lowry Avenue and Penn Avenue and West Broadway in North Minneapolis, small businesses around the state? What does the surplus mean? What does it mean for social service agencies that continue to really support families, particularly in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis and the social justice crisis that we are coming through?
So with this forecast, I think that this is an opportunity for us to really help out those local businesses, especially those that were hit by not only the pandemic with the COVID-19, but because of the civil unrest. And over at the state capitol, I have a proposal right now to invest $300 million into Minneapolis and St. Paul to help out those businesses recover, those that have physical infrastructure damage to their properties. And you're really looking at this, and now with that, the financial forecast that we have, we will have the ability to really take on this debt of this year. If we were to fund the $300 million proposal that I have, it will only cost the state $42 million. And you think about that, in the for the life of the bonds that I'm proposing, over 21 years, it will cost the state only $450 million to invest in those communities that were impacted here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so we are having a hearing in Chair Nor's Jobs Committee coming up on Friday. And so I will ask all of you to really tune into that. We have folks coming from the north side, coming from other parts of Minneapolis and St. Paul coming to testify on that need. And, with this surplus, it means that, we can actually put in more money to help out folks in our community who are struggling with home, paying their rent, home ownership. And I know that there's some proposal out there. And just on the housing piece real quick, my committee, we have the capacity to really put in housing infrastructure bonds to really see how we could start addressing and tackling the affordable housing crisis that we have in the state. And right now, roughly every $100 million that we put in, it's going to only cost the state around $12 million per year to put into housing infrastructure bonds. And so that's something that I'm really interested in looking at. I know that there are other members who are working on the different pieces to help out our communities and haven't been sitting in on those conversations. And so I don't really know what people are pushing, but I do know that, my committee, we're looking at some of the crises that we are seeing in the state through different angles.
What are businesses in your district and 59A asking? What do they need to make 59A both restored and better than they were on the other end of the pandemic and the social unrest crisis? What do you think?
Just opportunities for the businesses to really have some ownership and you really build on the wealth that they have, some of the money that they have put into their own businesses. And I think that really goes back to the piece that I'm trying to do with the recovery effort, where we know that folks have put in, their life savings and all that into their businesses, and now they don't have anything. And so we really need to put forth this effort at the state and understand that, Minneapolis and St. Paul is the engine of the state economically. And if we don't help out our local communities here who are being impacted, whether that's because of the social unrest or because of the pandemic, then we will not thrive as a state. And so that's the talking points that we are, using over at the Capitol to really see that, we get together to really address the need of these small businesses that we have in the district, not just on the north side, but throughout the state of Minnesota.
How has COVID-19 impacted your district? Do you have a sense of how many cases there are in your district? Maybe you don't, and I didn't prep you on this, so if you don't have it, don't worry about it. But I'm just speaking like conversationally as we do. What's your sense of the impact of COVID-19 in your district or in the north side in particular?
Yeah, thank you, Al, for the questions. I don't have the number specifically, but right now we're really pushing the Department of Health, as they are rolling out their vaccination, that we are getting it out to folks who are eligible to get the vaccines right now. And I know from just hearing from community members that, there are lines, like over at North Point and all of that too. But we are also hearing on the flip side from colleagues throughout the metro area that are sharing news that say, hey, over here at Hennepin or over here at this area hospital, we have some extra vaccines. So if you know folks who qualify, who are eligible to get vaccine, give them this number. And so we know that, that's not right, that, because of certain circumstances, because of people who are a little bit more financially well off, they have more opportunities to access the vaccine. And so really working with the Department of Health to look at the different areas throughout the state of Minnesota, really making smart strategic decision on vaccination. And so we will do our part. I will do my part to get the state, and we heard from the governor and the commissioner of health last week over at Shiloh Temple, talking about their plan to get this into our Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. And so I'm really hopeful that we will, be able to get folks who want to be vaccinated the vaccines that they need.
Representative, let me do this. I often, from time to time, ask my guests to give more background. I haven't asked you in a long time, and there may be listeners that haven't met you before and don't know you, but people's personal stories make it real all the time. So let me take the liberty of asking you to tell again what your path has been to this point of service to our community. I think your story is a great story. It's a great community story, and I'd love for you to share that, how you came to both decide and to succeed in winning the city council, not city council, but the legislative seat. And right now, you're kind of like one of the deans. You're in your third term, I believe. Is this third term? And so you're an elder statesman now for North Minneapolis.
Thank you, Al, and thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. For me, I grew up here on the north side. My family, I was actually born in a refugee camp in Thailand, and we came to the United States when I was less than a year old. And we were in the Home and Housing Project, which is now Heritage Park. And we were there from, I believe, 93 until 95. And then they tore those down. And I grew up in the public housing areas over by Harrison Park. That's where I spent most of my life, and then graduated from Paxton Henry High School. I went to Carleton College, where I met one of your other guests on here, Robin Wansley, who is a good friend of mine from Carleton College. And, just coming back home after college and really looking for stuff to do to really make an impact on the north side in my community. And I'll be honest that I did not see political office as a first option. Growing up on the north side, I thought that electoral politics is only when elected officials come by, get our votes, and then leave and never come back. And that's a very jaded view, but it was actually over at Carleton where I learned about the political process that we have in place, where it's not created for folks like you and I, and that we really need to be involved in order to really shape what's going on in our community. And so I got excited and started working on political campaigns here in Minneapolis. Went to work and intern over at the state capitol, and that's where my passion for the legislative process really started, where a lot of those folks over there were not folks from the north side or that we see in our community every single day. And I actually just wanted to work as a staffer to really push legislation, but oftentimes it is who you are politically connected to. And growing up on the north side from a very low-income family, refugee immigrant family, I did not have any of those political connections. And so I decided to just run myself, and knew that the best way of getting elected is getting out there to talk to our neighbors on the north side, to see and hear what are their visions, like their values and aspirations for our community. And fortunately, I was able to do that. And for the last 3 election cycles, I've been reelected there. And to your point, Al, I'm considered one of the elder statesmen now, in the Minnesota legislature for the north side.
Well, congratulations. That's a wonderful story. And, you're welcome here anytime. We're going to be doing these Monday sessions every Monday for the foreseeable future. Our focus on the elections in November and beyond. And our idea is that we, number one, create a platform for people seeking office to share their vision, their point of view, create a place where people who are elected to come and report out, or to invite the public to continue to support them. Our objective is to give people quality information and give it to them in a way that rings true to each person's intent and their character and their vision and their passion, right? And so we are not interested in bashing people, but we're interested in elevating everybody. And I applaud each of the people that will be coming on today for deciding, like you decided, that they've got a voice that matters, and they simply have to roll up their sleeves and go knock on doors, and it's about the numbers at the end of the day. How many people have you talked to and tried to convince to support your point of view? So any parting shot right now, Representative? Otherwise, I want you to hang on as long as you can. I know you're busy, but hang out as long as you're able to, and jump in whenever you want to, because we're informal that way in this program. But a closing thought for the community right now.
So we just want to say thank you again, Al, for inviting me and for the other candidates. And you are right that this is the time, and I'm excited to hear about the guests that you have on to really come on here to tell their stories of why they are passionate around running to represent the folks that are in their community. And we know that at the end of the day, having more voices, in this process will really ensure that our communities, all the diverse perspectives are being represented, whether that's at City Hall or at the state capitol. And so I look forward to listening in a little bit before I hop off, and know that I will be here to support, the work that folks are doing at the city level, so that the north side in the city of Minneapolis could thrive as we move forward in the state. And so thank you, Al, again for the opportunity.
Well, Representative Fooley, thank you so much. Continued success in your work, and hope your family and all remain safe and hang out as long as you can. Good to see you. Great smile. Great to see you every time, man. I'm Al McFarlane. This is our Monday session, our leadership session on Conversations with Al McFarlane. And again, thanks to my colleague and cohort in this, Diana Hawkins, and the team over at Hawthorne Neighborhood Org. Diana, how are you today? Good to see you as always. Andrew, good to see you. And in fact, let's change the screen so that everybody's in the waiting room is on the screen, so we know who's here, and we can make sure that people get a chance to. My goal is that everybody get a chance to speak today, as always, and we want to have responsible, principled, and passionate conversations about who we are and what we're doing to build community. So Diana, first of all, just say thanks to you, and Andrew, first of all, for co-hosting this. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today, Al. I'm excited about today's show. It seems like we got some good guests that's going to be on, and I'm just telling you, I'm still charged up from last week, because that was a dynamite show. I'm still getting comments for you from that. So I just want to pass that along. If you guys are watching the show, watch it on Mondays, because I'm telling you, it's exciting.
There we go. Well, let me start today. Good to see you again, Brother Teakin. Good to see you again, I think, over for Ward 3. Brother Rainville, how you doing, man?
Thank you so much, Alan. I love it when you call me your brother, because we're all sisters and brothers, aren't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. And good to see you, Alicia, and others are going to be joining us. Let me start with AJ. Some people call him Al Jr. I've heard him called Little Man sometimes. That's what his dad calls him. But Al Flowers Jr. is here, and Al Flowers Jr. is running for City Council for 9th Ward in South Minneapolis. AJ, what's your preference? I can call you Al Flowers. I can call you AJ. You tell me what you want to be called.
Well, to me, it doesn't matter. I mean, AJ, Al Jr., either one works for me. It doesn't matter. Not Little Man though. We can't do Little Man no more. I don't think that's gonna work anymore. Trying to run for the council seat. I think they want to see the big man, the grown man. So, but no, but absolutely, it doesn't matter, man. AJ, Al Jr., it doesn't matter to me.
Well, I'm going to refer to you as AJ if you're okay with that, and I'll do what you want done, because I think naming is important. And I threw the Little Man out because I know that's what your dad calls you affectionately, and that simply personalizes and humanizes you. You got a daddy who loves you, and to him, you still little him, So, but I certainly get it. I understand, and thank you for being here. Let's talk about your candidacy. Talk about Ward 9. What about that ward interests you and gives you the passion, the idea that you need to and can serve that community? What's the story in Ward 9?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, Mr. McFarlane. Well, what really interested me is that Ward 9 is a very diverse and progressive ward. It helps shape the way my fighting is. It's a passionate ward. It's a ward that loves like artists and very, very progressive and fight for the issues of all. As I've seen over time, I always, like Brother Fuli said before, I always fought and tried to do different things. And I've seen that at one point we're going to have to actually put our hat in these races and actually try to get the change that we want to see done, to see the things that we want to see through. So one of the main things about Ward 9 is its diversity, its strength, and its empathy. I think that's one of the main things that I love about it, is the empathy, because that's where I come from, is being empathetic. You know, I think we get mixed up with words like sympathetic and empathetic. And I think Ward 9 is known for being empathetic because it feels the problems of the city, and it will fight. Ward 9, they do fight for all issues that in the city. Some of them, I'm not gonna lie, some of them I'll be like, woo, but I stand behind us. But yeah, we're a fighting ward, and I come from a fighting family, and I come from a family that looks to serve people. So seeing a ward that comes from that's very inclusive of everyone and has that strong diversity, that was one of the greatest reasons why I wanted to come and help build stronger diversity and stronger compassion and empathy within the ward.
Tell me your personal story, AJ. You're not born here, or are you born here in Minnesota?
Oh yeah, HCMC, right downtown Minneapolis. I was born and raised in Minneapolis.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Born and raised in Minneapolis. My father, as you know, from a young age, I was introduced to public service. It was my grandmother who was a preacher. My mother was the secretary of the NAACP, and my father, he's a freedom fighter. And then my auntie, she was part of the MPD. So I was able to see so many different ways of public service and ways to serve the public capacities. And that's where my love for it grew. Now with that, I still ended up almost was a kid that could have been in the wrong places at the wrong time, with all the leadership that I had and all the leadership that I knew growing up around even people like you, Mr. McFarlane and Brother Spike Moss. I still was one of them kids that was almost caught out here in this wave. If it wasn't for me having my first child at 19, I don't know where my life would be. And that's where my passion came and grew stronger, because I realized that some of the opportunities that I had just from knowing some of the leaders that I knew, some of these kids weren't able to get that, or some of these young people weren't able to get that. So I wanted to make sure that I left a platform in a way to be able to get their voices heard. Over time, I realized that that's not really what's happening. We wasn't, the people that was trying to get their voice heard wasn't heard. And that was one of my main motivations for running, because I believe it's a lot of people who have strong ideas and great ideas out here right now, but they just don't get a chance to sit at the table anymore, because we have this mentality of the gatekeeper mentality and stuff like that. And luckily I was one where I didn't have to run across them issues because of that, because the big Al, you know, so he was able to introduce me to certain people, and I was able to learn about the city of Minneapolis and the way the politics work. I never thought I would be into the actual politics side, because I always call myself a street reach person. I'm outside to deal with people on the grassroots levels, but I realized the people on the grassroots level have to have a seat at the table too. So that's one of my main motivations for running. That's probably my personal story of Minneapolis, how I grew up around it and almost became a kid that could have been a statistic of Minneapolis, but hopefully become a different statistic.
Let's talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm interested in your take on, not you in particular, but you speaking for a group of young Black men, of young Black people, and hopefully not losing you. Your video is going out, but if you hear me still, the question I'm raising is one where, can you describe the challenges and the frustrations, but also the opportunities of young people in general, young Black men in particular, and young Black men in particular, where there's an environment nationally, almost internationally, culturally, that is anti-Black and that fears Black men. So if you get back on, I want you to speak to that and talk about, you know, coming through that that wave of young people who questioned the establishment, and some of which went this way and some of which went that way. And you've described that you faced some choices, and you've ended up at a place where you think you want to represent the community in general in a multi-generational fashion, but certainly the voice of young people as well. So hopefully he'll get back on. I don't see him back in the call yet. You know, bandwidth issues are always there. Let me swing it over to my friend Alicia Smith from the Corcoran neighborhood. Alicia, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you, Mr. McFarlane?
I'm doing good. I understand that we have canceled or moved the program that we had planned for tomorrow night. We're going to be listening to a number of members of City Council, but that will be sometime down the road. Is that correct?
That is correct. Unfortunately, we did have to cancel our planned town hall kind of year in reflection with the council members because tomorrow night there's also a community safety conversation happening at the city level. And so we're going to encourage our residents in all of our communities to jump on that call and listen to the updates from the city.
Great, great, great. As you're preparing for the trial, what's on top of mind for you and your other directors over in South Minneapolis who, between you, I think represent being ground zero for the uprising following the death of George Floyd? I think jury selection begins next week, next Monday or so, or for the Derek Chauvin first trial. What's going on in your mind and on the street over in South Minneapolis?
Well, you know, part of the preparation from like the neighborhood's perspective, right, is about getting information out and getting accurate information out. And that's been our biggest push, is to get out accurate information and to break down this sort of judicial process that we're all about to undergo. And so we have a great deal of our residents concerned and confused about the process. And so really we've been taking time to educate people, like jury selection is happening. And when you talk to like trained professional lawyers who've litigated crimes of these magnitudes, this one is a first of its kind for many of us. And certainly there have been cases of where the police have murdered men before, but we've never had a global uprise that, you know, hinged on it like we do now. And so we're about getting out accurate information and preparing people for the steps and letting people know this first week of trial that we're upon is jury selection. And that can be pretty dull to, you know, your everyday person who is not an attorney. Certainly it's an interesting process that we all want to pay attention to and be mindful of the type of people that are selected to make a verdict or to give a verdict in the end. But we also want to know, you know, we want people to know that there will be no oral arguments through this component and what that looks like. And then we're also just helping people be prepared for resources. We have a great deal of elders and families in our communities that are concerned around their safety and the concern or the threat of outside agitators coming in, and those folks who are, you know, rightfully angry at this process and have zero faith in the system. And so we want to just make sure that if we have food resources, if we have monetary resources to get people in a place where maybe they feel a little bit safer or they feel like they can fall asleep at night and have some sense of security or peace for their own individual sake, we are trying to navigate where we get those resources and where do we point people for those resources. We have the resources, of course, as you know, I've gotten on your show plenty of times and talked about, we operate the C-Spot, which is a food and life resource center that we've operated out of my office here in the Corcoran neighborhood for a year and a month now. I started it at the beginning of February last year, and we've been operating ever since, not missing a beat, not missing a day, with no barriers, right? The goal is to provide these resources with no barriers to our communities. Let's not further exacerbate the embarrassment or the, you know, the hurt that we all feel, whether it's as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the uprising, as a result of the unrest, as a result of being either a brown person in this country, for a matter of fact, at this point.
Let me bring a couple of the other candidates into the call. I see Michael Rainville is here and Tikan Zaya Aida. Gentlemen, good afternoon again. Good to see you. As you contemplate the city hosting, you know, the county hosting this trial next week, Mike Rainville, what thoughts go to your mind? What are you looking for, watching out for? How do you analyze this for your own self, right? And in the context of what you think are the interests of the people that you want to represent in Ward 3?
That's a good question, Al. What I'm really interested in, as well as the people I've talked to, is just how this can bring about healing for our our city. You know, obviously the justice has to play out in the manner through the trial, but it's very clear that for us to go forward as a city, people have to buy into that it's a fair process, that it's a just outcome, and you know, and that is my hope personally, and and the hopes of the people that I've talked to in the third ward, that true justice happens and that we can heal as a community and go forth and be prosperous. We all have to get back to our education, our jobs, making this city work. Right now, we've been standing still for really a year, and it's been terrible. We have to heal and move forward, and hopefully, this trial will help do that.
What do you think are the ranges of positions or of understanding of people in your ward, from left to right or from top to bottom, from conservative to progressive? How do you identify, you know, people on the spectrum? I know you've got everybody, right, with every possible view. But what comes to your mind as how groups of people are looking at this process as it unfolds?
Oh, it's this ward is so diverse in its thoughts on police actions. Just this weekend, I met with some young people that were arrested on the freeway after the general election. We're in that kettling process. Was 4 of the 650 that arrested. So they have a very critical point of view of the justice system and police itself. When I asked about the trial, they were optimistic. They felt that, you know, this is the opportunity to heal and go forward. And of course, there are people in this ward who are scared. They were part of those of the unrest and the damage, and so that's of concern too. But the overall trend is people want to move forward. They want to have justice done. I think the greatest thing is we're all listening to each other, Al. That for the first time ever in my life in Minneapolis, ears are wide open at all levels, and that doesn't matter how you feel about the upcoming trial or the police, but what it matters is that we're all listening to each other and we all want to heal and move forward, and that's very heartwarming.
She can jump in, please. You are a candidate for Ward 7, and respond to the same questions if you're able to. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the question is, in your ward, what are the range of ideas? How do you respond to the challenges that lie ahead with the court case coming up? What's that mean for you and for the people that you want to serve in Ward 7?
So, like many of the others say, I'm looking and hoping for the city, the county, and the state to do the right thing. That's the number one thing. But on a more personal level, I'm trying to look for leadership in protecting our neighborhoods this time. That's a big thing. You know, I do live in the downtown neighborhood, and so I'm very much concerned about our downtown infrastructure, of course, but where we all live is where the brunt of the uprising, kind of befell us in the last time. And so I've been trying to speak to my neighborhood organization and other friends across the city is, do we have a plan to keep our neighborhood safe? And is there anyone really talking from, city leadership on that particular thing? With regards to blocking our streets if we need to, or, do we have generators for power? There's a host of issues that we haven't heard. And so I'm trying to think in those ways. When I'm speaking to, people, when I'm making calls, constituents, prospective delegates, again, it's the same thing, is that most people are just hoping and praying that our judicial system will do the right thing. As Alicia had said, we've had other instances of death through excess force, police brutality, but never one that went global. And so for those, when I'm talking to leaders and stakeholders, it's kind of beyond us now. It's about Minnesota. You know, we've got to care about how we look in front of the world. And you know, by doing the right thing, we can exonerate ourselves and start to work on truth and reconciliation, a deep dive into our state's history, and hopefully be able to move forward like people were talking about, all of us together. Because I think, as Mr. Rainville had said, you know, I keep talking to people about the Wiz. If you got, you know, y'all remember the Wiz. And when Dorothy landed in Oz, she met Miss One, remember? And Miss One just was running around with her bag saying, we all want to get back to running our business. Honestly, that's what we, you know, that's what we are really trying to do here. And the only way we can do that is by having our judicial system and our elected leadership working together to do the right thing. And those of us here, us regular folks, working with our neighbor, with our current ward leadership on what plan do we have to protect, you know, just my block this time over.
Let me ask you and Michael Rainville, I don't know if you're still there, Brother Al Flowers Jr., if you're still there. And I'm looking for Crystal Porter. I don't know if she's in the waiting room or not, or Elijah Norris or Robin Wansley Warloba. If they are there, we'd love to bring them into the conversation, as well as Stephen J. Frisch. But I wondered if the two of you, the three of you, if you're there, AJ, go
Mr.
ahead.
McFarlane, can I just interrupt real quick? My
Yes.
audio is so bad, so I'm gonna leave you all so you guys can have a robust discussion. I'll be back next time.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's fine. Thank you so much. Good to see you, and come back again. So, Michael, the question I was going to ask is, how do we, adequately inform our voters, our neighbors, about their opportunity to bring their voice to bear? What's the tradition in Ward 3 that you want to both uphold and build on for voter engagement, and how do you do that?
Well, Ward 3 traditionally has some of the highest voter turnout in the area. And ironically, in the last 10 years, this ward has grown faster than any other ward in the city. So there are a lot of voters here. And, you know, traditionally that was knocking on doors, little coffee parties, community meetings. I served in the St. Anthony West Neighborhood Group for 35 years. I did not run for election last week because I felt it would be unethical to run for office and be on a neighborhood board. But the neighborhood groups, the neighborhood boards have been very active in the past, helping get the word out. Of course, being neutral, but that's all upside down now because of the COVID. So, you know, personal contact really is not in anybody's best interest. So what I have been doing is a lot of Zoom meetings in the apartments and condos around here. I have building captains who introduce me to people. So I use Zoom, and it could be as few as 4 or 6 people. The other night I had 25 people, which was very interesting. Everybody's so passionate here, they all have a tendency to talk at once. So the person refereeing really had their challenges. But ultimately, I feel very confident that the vaccines will be rolling out. The virus will be somewhat put at bay. And so that door-to-door, face-to-face activity can continue. Because ultimately, that's the best way to reach the voters, is face-to-face. Now, you know, I have a large amount of volunteers, and we'll be putting literature indoors. But people have to meet the candidates. You have alluded to that as well, Al, that people have to know who they're voting for. And for me, I take it very seriously that I will be wearing out a lot of pairs of tennis shoes this summer. So I plan on walking and knocking and listening.
It's great. Andrew, jump in here, my friend, and Alicia. How do we motivate, from your point of view as community organizers, Diana, how do we motivate our residents to be active, to be attentive, and to show up and to show out with our voices? Andrew, what do you think?
I mean, you know, in a way, I kind of almost reject the question, not reject you all, but I think we asked, and Diana and I know this from the city, the public is asked to do so much by the city. So I think be involved, but especially to our electeds, I think so often our elected, especially in the city council, we elect them, and then it seems like they can't do anything on their own without getting every little detail from the public and asking the public to do every, okay, chime in on this, chime in on this, chime in on this. And we have, especially in Hawthorne, a group of people that, yes, we want their voice heard, but at the same time, I think the city needs to understand that our residents are struggling in a lot of ways, and our residents do not have the time to be involved in everything that is happening in the city. And I think it's what happens is it's insulting for the city to come to the neighborhood and say, we need this from you. And our residents have to get food on the table. They have to go to one of 3 jobs. They have to find ways to get transportation when the bus is running late. And then the city comes back and says, well, we didn't get opinions from anyone. You guys didn't help. And so, yes, I think in a moment like this, where we're at an urgent turning point, yes, we want to get as many people's voices into this conversation, and us as a neighborhood org, we want them to come to us, and we have our direct routes to people that we can get them to. But oftentimes I just think it's not hypocritical. I can't think of the word, but I think sometimes we just need our leaders to make the best decisions they can. We need our city employees to make the right decision. And yes, I think there's a trust issue there, but there's a trust issue for a reason. So, for us as a neighborhood org, we want to get people involved, but there has to be an understanding that people cannot commit their entire lives to running the city.
So we're asking sometimes too much of ordinary people, right? Is that what you're saying,
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yep.
Alicia, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, listen, I echo everything that Andrew is saying. I think that we have exalted and leaned on everyday Minneapolisans way too much, with nothing in return. It would be fair if I said, hey, you know what? 700 people that I see on a regular that continue to show up to these events and show up and participate in this civic process pretty regularly at city council meetings, so on and so forth, that now I'm trying to reach a different demographic of people who are working folks that are surviving multiple pandemics, right? Like, we have to remember that the global pandemic is one that affected everyone else, but poor people of color, and working class folks have been in pandemics for most of their entire lives. And so it isn't something new, but we're leaning on people with nothing in return. So a fair statement from the city council or another group would be something that would burden. Says, if I come to attend a meeting, then I will give you a $25 gift card in return.
We've got a bandwidth problem because you're squelching on us right now.
Okay, so one of the things, can you hear me, Mr. McFarlane? Or I was trying to figure out if it was my volume here. All right. Okay. I think you're muted. But one of the things that we talk about often when we solicit the folks that people of color, working class folks that haven't been engaged at the same level of those folks who are maybe retired, control their own schedules, is how do we compensate them as just a touch point to say, thank you for your time. Diana, thank you for this hour that you lended. Here's a $20 gift card to the local grocery store. Here's a $20 gas card. Those they're nominal amounts, but what it says is thank you for the time. I value the insight. And I appreciate it. And I know that the reason that you are here is because you're sacrificing to be here. You're sacrificing, whether it's being at work or looking for a work or being at home with your children and helping with homework. So thank you. Here's a token of my appreciation. And so what Andrew said is so true. We lean a lot and we give very little in return. And most recently, I would say that neighborhood organizations have bared the brunt of that. And we've been asked to uplift and carry this large message to our everyday constituents that, these folks who are making, nearly $100,000 a year aren't able to do. And that's fine. We can partner with them, but don't place the unfair burden for Andrew to get the message out to all, 20,000 of his neighbors when the city isn't able to do so.
Michael Rainville, let me ask you, when you've been at the neighborhood and community organization side for a generation, as you move into wanting to shift to being elected, what do you think city council ought to be doing, the city ought to be doing to support the work that you did as a community service organization and organizer? How's the value that organizations like Corcoran Neighborhood and Hawthorne and St. Anthony, how is that value both recognized, appreciated, supported? How do we grow it rather than keep it in the margins, which is where I think it almost is now? It's threatened. What do you think?
Well, I think I learned something new today. So, Alicia, I agree with your idea of the gift cards for people who participate. I think that's a really fair way to get people out, and it's not a lot of money, but it shows the respect of them giving their time and their opinions. I'm going to adopt that idea. So, thank you for saying that. And Andrew, you alluded to that too. That people are stressed. It's a luxury to come to a neighborhood meeting and give their time away from all their other busy schedules. But Al, to get back to your question, the neighborhood groups are doing really good work and there's really engaged people, but they're not backed up with the proper support from the city. And that's just as basic as funding. So while there were millions of dollars 10, 15, 20 years ago when the NRP was first formed, and that really brought people because they could spend money in their neighborhood. They knew, so over here on the east side, we knew that a library was needed. And we worked with the library board and the other neighborhoods. There's a coalition of the Sheridan neighborhood, Bongo neighborhood, St. Anthony West. And we had a new library. We even have a children's wing in there. And the St. Anthony West neighborhood donated some cute computers so the children could come and do their homework and further education. Well, that can't happen anymore because there's just not that funding. So it's really important moving forward. And should the voters see fit to have me serve them and I am elected, I will make sure I will do everything I can to get that funding back up. And again, I will reflect and act on Andrew's point and Alicia's point that people are so stressed out that for them to give their time, there should be some type of a monetary reward. You know, a $20 gift card to Target goes a long, long ways.
AJ, you're coming in and out, and I think we lost you early on. Hope you can still hear what we're saying. But the topic right now is, what would you do? How do you see, if you're elected to city council, shifting or encouraging the council to engage and support community and neighborhood organizations, the NRP-based organizations like Hawthorne, like St. Anthony, like Corcoran and Powderhorn, like NERC in North Minneapolis and Jordan, have a historic, I believe, positive story about engaging neighborhood people, but yet they are not being, in my view, green-lighted for growing their capacity to bring neighbors together. What do you think about that? Does that sound right to your point of view? And what do you think is needed, AJ, to get the city to support both legacy neighborhood organizations and groups, legacy community serving institutions, say like the Urban League or the NAACP, but also new and emerging groups? You represent, I think, a number of young people that might not be coming straight through the neighborhood process or straight through the settlement house process, but they have active voices and they have every right to express their voices. How do we create ways to support that engagement? What do you think, AJ?
First off, I'm sorry about my connection issues earlier. It just had me knocking in and out. I was trying my best to stay in. I had to run into the church under the Wi-Fi. So thank you for that. But I believe our neighborhood organizations and our legacy organizations is the backbone of social movement within our city. Most of the movement that has happened has came, most of the policies and different initiatives that has been passed has started from our neighborhoods and our neighborhood revitalization programs. So I believe that we have to further strengthen them programs so that they can have a more, like you said, a farther capacity to reach more people. I think one of the main problems we have is that we don't reach the right people with the programs that they're set in place to do. We're not reaching the kids who's out here right now that's getting in trouble. We're not reaching the kids who's actually going to need the help with education. We're not reaching these certain kids that actually needs the help for these programs and the funding that happens. So one of my main things, if I am elected city council, will be to work with my neighborhood organizations to make sure that I can strengthen them and that we can develop a plan so that community can be involved in everything that we do. Long as the community involved and you have a strong capacity, then you have a chance for the community to buy into a lot of these projects, especially in my particular ward, Ward 9, where it's going to be a lot of redevelopment and different things. And if we're not careful, it can end up being gentrified, right? So we have to make sure that our neighborhood organizations have a strong power at the table too. So if you lessen their funding and lessen their capacity, now when they're sitting there at these organizations, they are sitting at the table with these councils because they don't have that power or capacity. They're not taken as serious as they need to be. You know, one of the things about me when I came and ran was I felt like the organizations or the young people or different great initiatives that's going on are not being heard. They are not getting a chance to actually sit at the table or actually being heard at the table, right? You might sit down at the table, then they walk out the room and you'll never hear from them again. And that is a problem. We have to make sure that we are investing in our future, and especially all the young, great people that we have in Minneapolis, whether it's music, athletics, education, dancing, art. It's so much talent here in Minneapolis alone, but we don't actually focus on our kids, or I would say a lot of the things that is focused on our kids, I don't think they're actually reaching the kids or the neighborhoods and organizations or the people that it should be reaching. So as a city council member, I will work hard to make sure that our neighborhood organizations is re-strengthened. I think the neighborhood revitalization program will really help us, especially in my ward, moving forward to rebuild so that the community is involved with rebuilding up our ward and our city.
AJ, thank you for that. I was intrigued by your comments early on about being always, even though you had, strong parents and grandparents and standing in the community, like every other young man and young Black man in particular, you have a variety of choices and stumbling blocks always placed in front of you. And you have this expectation that you are not going to succeed, or that you're going to fail, or that you'll make the wrong decision, right? And so everything is kind of primed to pounce on you once you make the move, whatever that is. This is my words, not yours, but I'm interpreting what you were saying to me. So you can tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. And so the question behind this is, how then do you see, not yourself, but young men in your cohort, your generation, finding a way to not be either, what's the right word, either tempted or making the wrong decisions that they come to regret later? Or how do we enable them to make right decisions from the get, right, that keep them on a path of productivity and accountability? That might not be a fair question, but you get where I'm coming from. What are your thoughts?
Well, as you said, I mean, as a young Black man in the city, in most urban cities, especially in our city in Minneapolis, it's an easy option to go into the route of I would say mischievous behavior or bad behavior, right? Because of the fact that we lack three things. We lack an opportunity, first off. We lack a platform to actually spread our opportunities, and we also lack the care and value that we need, right? I believe one of the main things that we have to do is show our young people and show us that there is value. One of the main reasons why I was able to avoid that is because people like you, my father, the different leaders I know in the community, Bobby Joe, Miss Nona Champion, my auntie, Jeff Washburn, different people that instilled value inside of me and told me I was more than just somebody that's doing the wrong things, and told me that I can accomplish more than just doing things out in the streets, and told me that I can do more than just accomplish things out here in the wrong or mischievous way. Once my sister was murdered in 2014, my life really went into another level where it showed me that how shortly life is, because she was the one that didn't make as much of the bad decisions, and didn't make as much of the bad, was the respectful one, did all the things right, followed the churches and everything else. And it showed me that life is too short. We have to start valuing each other first before we can expect for anyone else to have a strong value for us. My main goal is to make sure that we can do that. How do we do that? Like I said, we give our young people opportunities first, an opportunity to be able to hear their story, an opportunity so they can speak and they can be at these tables. We got to make sure that we give them a real platform when they're at this table. So which means they're not just spoken to, they're not just spoken past, they're spoken to, and they can speak to us, really giving them a chance and show them and keep instilling. I tell my daughters and my kids all the time how valuable they are. Value is everything. Once you have value, people work. You've seen over North Minneapolis when the George Floyd riots was going on. It was young kids out in the streets that we be talking about, the same kids that's out here might be getting in trouble, that came together to make sure they could protect their community at that time. Them were the ones that was out there. I know this for a fact because I was out there. I know them. I know these people. They were out there because they felt valued at that moment. Now, since then, it hasn't been great, obviously, but the value system left. Once it was, we don't need y'all guns and their guns and all the stuff that we hated about them. They needed them when it was time to protect the community. And they didn't show them where their value was outside of just that part. They didn't show them the value of coming together in unity. And I believe value is the most important thing that we can teach our kids, and also giving them a chance at the table. We can't keep speaking about young people if we don't have young people there to also speak for themselves as well.
Great comment, Diana. We're at the end of the show. This hour goes so quickly, but I want to close out with you, Diana, just reflecting on, both Michael and Alicia and Andrews and AJ's comments. Great comments, by the way, and also the comments by State Representative Fu Lee. Diana, what do you think?
Let me just say this, Al. This was a great show again this week. AJ, I remember when you was a baby, so you really don't know me. But I know your mom, I know your dad, I know your aunts, I know your uncles. Matter of fact, I'm honoring your auntie this Thursday at the Hawthorne Huddle. So if you get a chance, please join us at 7:30. Michael, my friend, you've been out here as long as I have in the game, so you know what to look for. You know what we need. So the only thing I can say is, same thing you said, Alicia, we have to go out there and we have to get it and we have to work for us. Don't matter what color we are, we have to work for us, and we got to get our young people to the table. Thank you, Al. He's out there. Can't hear you.
Darling, you're muted.
You're muted, Al.
Great, thank you. What I said was so great. I'm sorry you missed it all. It was wonderful, but I'll paraphrase it. I want to thank all of you for being here, and thank those who are listening on YouTube and on Facebook. Tell your friends to join us here every Monday. We're going to just keep focusing on the spirit, the heart, the passion of serving ourselves, our community, serving society. And I want to thank Michael Rainville for his service and stepping up. I want to thank AJ, Al Flowers Jr., for your passion for stepping up. Thank Fu Lee, who was here, who did what you all are doing now, put his hat in the ring, and now he's an elder statesman for North Minneapolis on the state legislature. And thanks to Tegan, who was here. I see a note from Alicia saying, invest in the neighborhood. Alicia Gibson, thank you so much for your work and your intent. So we're going to do this every Monday. Let people know, show up. And I want to make sure that we have rich conversations. I'm Al McFarlane. Again, thank you. And we'll see you next Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Morning draws near, I rise and say my prayer. Little piece of bread to my mouth, little tea to wash it out. It's my daily tribulation, even though I'm a working man. I work so hard to make ends meet, so with one suit and one shoe to my feet. Days are getting so hard, yeah. But I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. On my 9 to 5, working till sun goes down. As the sun sets in the west, I pack my things and head on home, thinking about tomorrow's journey as I try these streets alone. It's my daily tribulation, oh yeah, searching for liberation, yeah. Got to step out of Babylon, take a step to Mount Zion. Days are getting so hard, yeah. But I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, yeah, working till sun goes down, sun goes down. Days are getting so hard, yeah. But I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, working till sun goes down, sun goes down, sun goes. On this 9 to 5, yeah, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, yeah, working till sun goes down. Oh Lord, got to keep working, got to keep working.